Hello, welcome to another New News Review. This is David Allen. I am joined by my special guest, Patrick, not Xavier Stewart, um, joining me today to talk about all things G.I. Joe, G.I. Joe Declassified, articulated points, I guess full force you're involved with, G.I. Joe conventions you're involved with, doing panels, discussions, and things like that. So you are really all over the place, Pat. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you. Usually it's not Picard I go by, not Xavier, but that's okay.
I wanted to make mine different because I didn't want to seem like I was bogarting somebody else.
Oh yeah, no, I've been not Picard online for the longest time. I started off really participating in the late '90s in discussions online, and my name would pop up Patrick Stewart, and I would get a lot of hate. People would tell me that I was a troll and that I was pretending, and it's like, no, I'm not even pretending to be that Patrick Stewart, but I am the real Patrick Stewart. So I started signing my name Patrick, not the guy from Star Trek Stewart. And then I realized I could just shorten that because if you knew Patrick Stewart, you probably knew Picard. So I was just Patrick, not Picard Stewart, as I would sign things like on the Usenet groups. And then that became handy for a handle on forums and things like that. So I'm pretty much not Picard everywhere.
Oh, okay. Well, when I've met you in person, I've said that. I said, "Hey, it's Patrick, not Picard," and you look. So I'm guessing you just that's part of your name now.
Yeah, I have seen not Picard. There's like a meme and some other things online. So it's not always me, but I'm pretty much not Picard everywhere online.
Well, I am very thankful for your time today. I appreciate you coming on and talking to me. I wanted to go into a little bit on Declassified first
Okay.
because there's new stuff coming out all the time, hidden stuff that people have never seen that are in people's collections. You and I had a discussion with a gentleman that was at Joe Fest this past year. Who had a father, I guess, that was a director or a producer or something on G.I. Joe, the animated series. And he had all this stuff and he was telling us about it. And I was just salivating in this conversation, trying to get as much out of this guy as possible. But you deal with this sort of stuff all the time. Tell us a little bit about how you go about getting all this background stuff and things for the old toys and the background of GI Joe in general through GI Joe Declassified. Isn't that you and Chris Neal?
Well, Joe Declassified is a lot of people. You know, I contribute where I can, but it's kind of the brainchild of Nomad's Damon. You know, he came up with, or yeah, he came up with Joe Declassified many years ago, and it was just this idea that a bunch of us were going to JoeCon, and we all had some interesting stuff and would share amongst each other. And then he said, "Hey, how about we just set up a booth so that everyone coming to the convention can enjoy this stuff, not just some of the people that have some rare stuff or have some weird stuff to share." And, you know, the second that he did that, there was just a lot of things that I had never seen because, you know, we all get into G.I. Joe and then we go down a rabbit hole. And there's a lot of stuff that people get really deep into. For example, like comics. I love the G.I. Joe comic book, but a lot of the things that I personally do with G.I. Joe is looking at pre-production figures. And so I spend so much time on that. It's not like I'm spending time digging through international comics and all this stuff that other guys are. So then as soon as there's this booth full of stuff, I get to see, you know, comic books. I get to see all of the great merchandise coming out from G.I. Joe. I get, you know, there's every single year that there has been a booth and I go to it. There's stuff I've never seen. So I contribute my tiny one little portion. And then all the other guys are also doing that. And it ends up being this amazing booth that if you've never seen one, you definitely need to get to yourself to a convention where Declassified sets up. As far as looking into stuff, like I said, it's really the combination of all of us down our own little path, and then putting all that together is really what it is.
I've seen your booth at numerous conventions over the years, and it's exactly what you're saying. It's kind of like an Indiana Jones type of situation where there's all these treasure troves of things. You're like, holy cow, how did they find that? Where did that come from? What's this? You know, all these mysteries and cool stuff to look at. I do recommend anybody that goes to a show that Declassified is at, they definitely spend some time and carve out a portion of their time at the Declassified booth, because it's a treasure trove. I could spend the entire convention just going through stuff there because there's so much cool stuff, talking to people, talking to different people, because there is a lot of people there at that booth. There's not just you and Chris Neal, there's Carson Metaxas, sometimes Brian Sowers there. There's a bunch of different people. I don't know all the people, in fact. There's so many people.
Yeah, Chris Murray is always kind of our person in charge of getting the booth all together and making sure that that always happens. Which means that we'll always have one at like the big GI Joe conventions. We were at JoeCon for the last several years. Maybe was it the last 10? Maybe more than that. And we've been at Joe Fest the last several years, and we're always at Assembly Required in Codename Iowa Assembly Required. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's anytime I step into that booth, it's almost conventions are so hard because there's so many people to talk to, and your time is split. It's one of those times where you wish that you were the multiple man and you could just send copies of yourself out. If I could, I would have one of myself just stationed in that booth all the time, because there's always people coming by, and it's always great conversation from, we try to make GI Joe super accessible by not just bringing this stuff and showing it to each other and taking off, but by setting it up in a booth where everybody showing up gets to see it. It makes it so that the people who are first-time convention goers, a lot of those people, their minds are really blown whenever they see things. And it's not just pre-production stuff. We've brought like variations there before, common international things, as well as the super rare international things. I swear every time something Fun School shows up, I've never seen it before. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's definitely a good thing that the GI Joe community has, that I wish that I would see at other conventions.
I agree with you on several points that I want to touch on. I was at Joe Fest this last year, and you know that I am involved with the show and I help run the show. And I couldn't even do everything that I wanted to do. I was trying to help out with one particular celebrity guest, and I was monopolized in that particular area, but I was trying to do so much other stuff, help Carson and in the panel room, trying to do pages, and then obviously I was doing load in and load out and stuff like that. And when people come to you with emergencies and questions, you have to try and help. So I'm right there with you. There's not enough time to do everything. Next year, I'm going to change that, because I really wanted to spend more time around the floor, and I didn't get to do as much. I didn't get to see as many panels as I really wanted to see this year. But it was one of those situations that was a last minute thing that they asked me to help out with, and I was like, all right, this sounds cool, I'll help out. But it monopolized too much of my time, and I wish that I shouldn't have done that. And second, the Assembly Required, I'll be going to that in November 4th and 5th this year. If anybody's listening to this, you should go to Assembly Required. It's one of the preeminent fan experiences in the Joe community. And third point I wanted to mention about what you were saying is, I was a new fan coming into this community around 2010. So I've been in the community for about 13 years. I know the community has existed since the late 90s with the forums, General's Joe's, His Tank, and Yojo.com, and all these forums that existed prior. And it just grew, and then got onto Facebook, and it just continued on. But I didn't realize it until I guess 2010 when they first did a Joe Con in Florida. Here, I'm in Florida. If you weren't aware of that, in
Mhm.
Orlando, the first Joe Con that I attended, and so that community, when I saw it, I was like, this is incredible. All the people that I met the first time and all the things that were there. The people that were at that first Joe Con were like Propust from Hasbro, Carson, Dan Clansmith, James Kavanaugh, all with their books, their first books, issue 1 and issue 2 of their books. Ron Rudat was at a table. I didn't know Ron Rudat from The Man on the Mars. I came because it was G.I. Joe and Larry Hama was there. And I'm a big comic book guy. And Larry Hama is like my God. And I had to go see him. That was my second time meeting him. And then there was a few other people that I knew, like Robert Atkins and stuff like that. But then I met Kurt Busigian and all these guys. And it was like, holy moly. So I'm in the same boat as these new people coming in every year at these shows that have never seen a lot of this stuff. And the Joe Declassified is chock full of all kinds of unique stuff that I didn't even know about. Even though I've been in the community 13 years, I'm learning new things, finding out new things every day from you guys in the community and stuff like that. So yeah, I 100% agree with you. It has to be accessible to the new fans so that we can see what's going on. Fun School Ron is like an expert guy on Fun School. And from what I
Mhm.
understand, he still hasn't found every Fun School figure or variation of Fun School figure. So that's how many of those there are out there, that many.
Yeah, the guy that I usually go to, I really like Fun School Ronnie's channel. He has a lot of firsthand knowledge, like of anyone that I've seen online.
He needs to
And
do
I
a
love
book.
the fact that he's posting things and he shows his collection. The first time I watched a video of his, I learned more about the Pepsodent figures. I didn't know that there was some of them made in Bangladesh, but there's a difference in the card. That was new news to me, and it's all the time he's posting really good information. So yeah, I definitely recommend people check out his YouTube channel. And then Drew Haggerty. Oh man, Drew and his Fun School collection is insane. Like, if you want to talk Fun School with somebody, hit him up. He knows what he's talking about. Like, if you hop into a conversation and it's about Fun School, usually he shows up because he, he knows a lot about it. But Fun School, it is a deep topic because they made a lot of changes to figures, and they would run figures for a long period of time. And anytime you're running the same character for multiple years on end, there's going to be changes. But it felt like they would make changes sometimes on a monthly or weekly basis. Like, some of those figures are so ridiculously rare. If you look at minor things, like I have a lifeline where instead of, I think the holster is red and the gun is gray, whereas normally the gun is red and the holster is gray, I think. Whichever it is, it switched from the way that I normally see it. And stuff like that is always very weird. I enjoy that. And like, to expand on what you were saying, I think that we're really lucky because of the fact that not only do we have these incredibly talented people creating GI Joe for us throughout the 80s and 90s and today, like Larry Hama and Ron Rudat and Kirk Bazikian, but the fact that those guys are still willing to give to us by showing up some of these conventions, we're incredibly fortunate.
Yep, you're very correct in that. Um, I wish Fun School Ron would do a book. Now that a lot of people are starting to do books, I get the
Mhm.
G.I. Joe in Espanol collection. I got obviously the Action Force books, and there's been rumors of a Korean book and then a Brazilian book. And I haven't seen confirmation, 100% confirmation when that stuff's coming, but I've heard rumors of those two books. And I think Fun School Ron obviously should be the guy. If not, he needs to get with who's the other guy that you were saying?
Drew
Drew,
Haggerty.
Drew Haggard. The two of them need to get together and do a book about Fun School. The book would be probably huge because there's so
Yeah,
many variations.
books they can be a huge undertaking. There is an old book by Ron Connor that's out there that covers a lot of international figures. But I do think that the approach of releasing a different book or set of books based on the market of release makes a lot of sense to give the figures that particular flavor that they had,
Yeah.
in the packaging style and all of that stuff that was specific to that market. I think that is deserving of its own book. But that's a huge, like making a book is a huge undertaking. I knew James Kavanaugh whenever he was still making his very first book. And, so I got to hear from him along the way of all the difficulties that, he ran into just getting all of that done. He was being pretty picky and it shows because those books are high quality. But it's just like, I can't imagine the time it takes to take photos that are that quality, pictures of all the accessories too. It's not just like you get away with taking a picture of the figure. You kind of need to take a picture of the accessories if you have them, and just making sure the accessories are sized right, make sure there are no mistakes in the book. Because unlike the internet, if you put something up on a website and somebody notices a mistake, you can fix it. You can't do that really with a book unless you're fortunate enough to get a second printing. And even then, you've put wrong information out there that's going to be traded for years and years. So I think that making a book is really, really hard. So kudos to the people who have done that.
I would like to get a China book because I love the beautiful packaging on the China GI Joes. I've seen a few people post their collections of Chinese types of beautiful packaging. I love them. And then there's a big community in Australia. I didn't know GI Joe got to Australia, but apparently it did. And someone needs to do a book about that era too. But yeah, I think regionally, I think that would be kind of nifty if someone could do a book from every region and you had like all these, because there's no way to get it all. There's no way in a million years. Even people like the lady in Texas that tried to get every single thing around the world. I can't think of her name.
Yeah.
Air Devon tried to get everything. She kind of went off the deep end, and that didn't work out for her. She was trying to do a book of every single GI Joe, every variation. It was just too much.
Yeah, that was eye-opening to me because whenever you look at the GI Joe line and you've been collecting it for a long time, it feels like, well, I could get this character in each country, and you can, for a lot of characters, for a lot of figures, maybe you could get one from each country, and that would be cool. But when you start thinking about things carded and how you kind of do want to see the differences in that, well, getting a full carded collection from 82 to 94, think about how daunting of a task that is. Then copy that for Spain, Italy, the United Kingdom, the Benelux countries, Australia, China, Brazil, Mexico. Okay, that's just the amount of space that takes up becomes something that you can really not easily imagine unless you go and watch the videos of her collection, and then you can really see.
I've seen, and I know people that went there, 4 or 5 people that actually went there. And
I was there.
It gives the name hoarder another definition.
Well, I don't want to call her a hoarder because hoarders, in my mind, a hoarder is a little messy and things are almost garbage-like. But her collection wasn't that. It was just a lot.
It was a lot, but she didn't have any walls. You couldn't see her walls. She had totes stacked. Her entire house was a maze of totes and stuff on walls
with figures hanging on them.
Yeah.
And that was how she kind of kept track of some things because it's too hard to dig out those Fun School figures whenever you need to see if that's the one that you have.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you have 8 packaged Night Ravens, that's going to take up a good stack.
It's true. And I have a good friend that is a carded collector, and he doesn't even have every single card from 98 82 to 94. And the thing about that, there's variations on those cards.
Yeah.
Some of them have the minifigure, some of them have the paint, some of them are 2-packs, where some of them are 1-packs. There's variations in the figure themselves. Some of them, like Rakondo, there's like 6 variations of Rakondo. There's all, it's impossible. So these guys that are doing this stuff, these books, eventually that's what we're going to end up having, is like a library of all international GI Joes, because that's the only way to actually be able to look at this stuff and enjoy it the way that it's meant to be enjoyed, because you're never going to have all this stuff. But you
Right.
guys
Well,
are finding new stuff all the time. Is there anything new that you're going to be showing off at AR this year that you found? Anybody that you know of?
wow, that's a really good question. I haven't really thought about that. This year I've been mostly focusing on, I mean, not really. There's not too much that is new information or anything that I've gotten this year. I've been, filling in some gaps of some things that I've missed, but new discoveries are kind of difficult once you've moved past the years of stuff that I mainly collect. I mostly focus on 4-inch GI Joe, so I do 1982 through current for anything that's 3 3/4 or 4-inch, whichever you would call the modern line. That's really what I focus on, is the figures from that era. I don't really do vehicles. I have some vehicles. I have a lot of vehicles, but not really rare ones. Like I said, I've been focusing, and a lot of times it's not just a monetary focus, but it's also a time focus. I focus on variations as well. I was maintaining the yojo.com variations list. So if you look on there and you're like, that doesn't seem right, yeah, that's my fault. So I will take the blame there for anything that is weird on Yojo regarding variations, because we can no longer access that to change it. So I'm really hoping to contribute to 3D Joe's to get that fully updated with a brand new variations list, but we're not quick to just put things out there. I've talked with Carson about it, and we would like to get that thing kind of check over all of them again. So there's a few of us that are kind of looking over that now, and it's going to be a long process, because it's not an easy thing. Like, even if you think about it, like tracking down a variation now is hard. Like going to the store and finding GI Joe and the Pigs is not easy. So to track down the variations while they are still shipping to retail is difficult. So tracking down variations and the facts behind them and the timing of when they came out and all of that information, whenever you're looking back at like 1982 and 1994, it's nearly impossible. It's so difficult to do that. So it's just taking a bunch of us that have focused on it to relook at things, and hopefully we'll be able to eventually put out a better, but probably always work in progress list.
Well, that's very cool. I'm glad to hear that you're working on 3D Joes, because I'm helping Carson out myself with contributions in the comic book part of the site, because that's pretty much my expertise, is the comic book area. And I'm trying to get interviews with a lot of the different people for that. And I think Carson, thank God for Carson that he has 3D Joes up there, that all of us can contribute to it and make it what it is, because we need that. As a fandom, we need that. So if any new person comes along, you can say, hey, just go to 3D Joe's. There's a repository of everything GI Joe on there: packaging, art, comic books, not customs, but projects like what he's doing, like
Right.
his
Yeah.
books and things like
Operation Recall. Yeah.
that. Yeah. There's also interviews with creators and the history, people with the history of GI Joe and stuff. So it really is an all-inclusive website that anybody from any aspect of GI Joe can go to, and as well as people that are interested in variations and hard to come by, like production type samples, things like that, you guys find and show pictures of and stuff like that, like you do in your panels at the shows that you talk about a lot. And you do different types of panels. This past year, I think I saw the Ninja Force panel that was at AR last year, and then JoeCon, you had another panel. I'm blanking on what the panel was about.
I'm blanking on which ones we've done where. Usually, if we're putting out a brand new panel lately, it has been for assembly required. But some of the ones that then we have done at Joe Fest has been to kind of update them if there's any new information that we have. So we did a variations one at Joe Fest. That one was kind of rough just because of technology issues. But then I think did we do Tiger Force or did we do Ninja Force? Was Ninja Force?
It was Ninja Force last year because that was an all Ninja Force themed show.
That was at Assembly Required, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think the year before might have been Tiger Force at Joe Fest.
But then Joe Fest we did Tiger Force again because it's kind of a different crowd. So people got to see it, and honestly, the Tiger Force panel was one that as we were putting it together, it became really fun because there was a lot of information in there. And as you know, like I said before, we all kind of go down our own specific path. And as we were putting them together, not necessarily for a booth, but for a panel, it started to feel really full. And with Tiger Force, we actually got really nervous on time prior to Joe Fest and started having to decide how we could combine slides to make sure that we weren't going over our 50 minutes. And there were some things that maybe we even had to cut. Not at, we made decisions and didn't cut anything that isn't common knowledge, but it was kind of sliced down to what it was. We could have gone on a lot longer. Tiger Force turned out to be a big topic.
Well, there's a lot of Tiger Force if you actually think about all the original Tiger Force from the original 82 to 94, all the European Tiger Force, whether that be Action Force or Fun School, and then Brazil has Tiger Force, Mexico has Tiger Force, and then all the Club Tiger Force stuff that has come out in the last 20 years. There's a lot of Tiger Force. People don't realize. I didn't realize it. That's for sure. When I finally first found out about the European ones in Action Force, I was like, oh my God, look at these. These are awesome looking. And then I realized they did other versions in Brazil, and then Fun School copied a few here and there from different places. And yeah, there's a lot. And then the club did a lot of cool stuff that never was done, like the Tomahawk as a Tiger Force view.
Yep.
Who the hell wouldn't want a Tiger Force Tomahawk? That's awesome.
Yeah, that's one of the best club vehicles, if you ask me. That one really just stands out as being a nice big vehicle that really looked good. It's such a deep topic, Tiger Force. We could talk an hour about it probably now. I mean, when you think about what we were talking about before, all the various card backs, you could do that with Tiger Force and just look at Tiger Force card backs throughout the world.
Well, that's the thing about this G.I. Joe. There's so many different avenues to talk about. There's so many different topics that you can get deep into. There's some things going on, and I will talk to you about them when we get off. But there's a lot going on in the community. That's all I'll say about that.
Mm-hmm.
So then let's get into articulated points, which is kind of similar to Joe Declassified in a lot of aspects, but it's your baby and Philip Donnelly's baby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Philip and I have known each other for a long time. We both were at yojo.com. I've done a lot of things over the years. I've yojo.com, Joe Declassified. Those are some big ones. joeintel.com was another one that I had worked on that is no longer online. So it's probably why you haven't maybe heard of that one. But Philip and I were on yojo.com working together for a long time, along with Terry. And but Philip and I sometimes, like, we both we're kind of late night kind of guys. And so I would come home from work and, he's 3 hours away from me. So, or, he's West Coast. So he's up a little bit later. And that kind of makes our schedules a little bit capable of us kind of chatting at the end of the night. So if there's some new stuff coming up that he was putting up, or he had a big major overhaul and he wanted somebody to look at it that he was working on, because he put a ton of work into Yojo. Like we said about the books, like people don't realize how much work goes into those. Philip put a ton of work into Yojo, and he would show me what he had, and I'd be like, "Oh, that looks great." And if there's a typo, maybe I would catch it, maybe I wouldn't. Uh, oh, that's funny. But as things went out, he would show stuff. So we got to talking, and we just kind of wanted to do something that was GI Joe related, but kind of our own. And we both also have other interests. I'm wearing a Transformers shirt right now. I am a huge Transformers fan as well. Starcom is another passion of mine. I have Starcom HQ is another site that I have worked on in the past, and I mean the far past, because if you've been there, you can see how long it's been since it's been updated. But we wanted to have some sort of avenue to put something out online that was our own. So we came together and we made Articulated Points. And the way that it came together, I saw Philip on here actually describing how we came up with the name Articulated Points, and he nailed it perfectly. So if somebody hasn't seen your interview with Philip, you could just go ahead and watch that for the description of how that came about. Because I remember saying, well, how about points of articulation? Because that's kind of talking about, words. And then it's also like what people say in regards to figures. You got like 5 POA. So that kind of makes sense. And I remember Philip going, how about articulated points? It just kind of has a ring to it that's a lot quicker and still says that. It's like, then we started checking, oh, is the website available? Yes. Is the Instagram available? Yes. Is the Facebook available? Yes. Is the YouTube available? Yes. We're like, oh, wow, okay, we're doing this. And that's kind of how it all came together.
Well, and it's a really, really fun program. I enjoy watching it because I learn different things. And I'm not sure, we've had numerous conversations over the last few years in person. And I am gathering you kind of figure out that I like to get information, and I like to learn things, and I like to find out things. I've coined the phrase. Well, I shouldn't say I've coined the phrase, but I'm using the phrase. I like to see how the sauce is made, and that is a real big thing with me. And when I watch those, it's something new every single time, and I have to keep updating kind of my brain. It's like a computer. It keeps updating new information. Trying to retain all this information is very difficult. And I see sometimes Chris on full force is trying to remember something and he can't remember it, and then it'll come out later. And I'm the same way. I'm trying to remember all this stuff, and you guys keep bringing up new things, and I'm learning new things all the time. And I love watching your program because it's fun. It's not boring. It's kind of irreverent the way that Phil kind of makes fun of some of the things, and you're more detailed about the facts and stuff like that, which I'm more detailed about facts and things. So I really enjoyed the show.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, sometimes I think I go on too long. Like whenever I sit down because both Philip and we share the responsibilities very, very thoroughly, I think. Because for a lot of shows, people will ask, well, who does the editing? It's both of us. And whenever I sit down and I see myself talking, you can look at Philip's like audio, and Philip will, have something to say, and he'll take a breath and pause. Once I start going, like I just don't shut up sometimes. You could just look at my audio, and it's just this wall of lines, and it's like, oh man, how am I going to edit this? Because sometimes I have the tendency to say something, and in my mind, I don't know if I think that I didn't say it thoroughly enough, or I want to make my point clear, and so I'll just say the same thing roughly, like with different words. And in a video, that's really not necessary, because if somebody didn't catch something, just hit rewind. I don't need to keep repeating myself.
Right.
So sometimes whenever I have like a 12-minute video, that may have started off as like 45 minutes of me talking, and I'm cutting it down and trying to cut out all of the fluff and make it be a little more coherent. So I try to make it make sense. It's a lot of fun. There are some times where we come across something that really excites us, and it may not be GI Joe related, but I've always felt that GI Joe is, where all action figures stemmed off. Everything goes back to GI Joe.
It's true.
So I did want to have that GI Joe channel that allows some of that other stuff to come back in. If somebody's interested in Transformers, maybe they're interested in toys in general. If they're not interested in GI Joe and they're only interested in Transformers, they can watch just our Transformers episodes if they want. That's just kind of how I see it. And it makes it fun for me. It makes it fun for Philip, and that's what keeps us kind of going into it.
Well, the thing about articulate points that I enjoy a lot of is that when you're speaking about something, you need to have that passion about it. A lot of the folks that do what we do in podcasts and stuff like that, obviously wouldn't be sticking their mug up here for the world to see if they didn't have a passion for the subject matter that they're speaking of. So the more you have a passion for something, the comfortability of speaking and talking to people just comes natural as you do it. The more you do it, and you're a podcaster and you're doing articulate points and you're doing panels and stuff like that, and I've noticed you've gotten more comfortable as I've seen you over the years. And I've been watching you in all three of these avenues over the years, and you've definitely gotten more comfortable from where I started seeing you. So it's one of those situations. It doesn't come natural to people to put their faces up here and try to smile and have all the details and have all the facts and talk naturally. I can bring up I'm not going to be negative, but I can bring up one podcast that the guy is very stiff and very dry, and it's like, and he's just putting the facts out there, putting the information. There's no enjoyment in his voice or anything like that, where I don't see that with you and Philip. You guys, I can tell, enjoy what you're doing. You like to smile, you like to talk, you like to bring the facts out, but you're doing it in a nice, warm way.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, I have become more comfortable over the years. I've realized that in a live setting, like at a panel, if you hand me a podium, I will hide, and I don't like that. But if I get away from the podium, I find that since I do know what the material is and what I'm talking about, I feel a lot more comfortable. I've tried also different input methods. I thought about, do I need to write every single thing down and have like a script and a teleprompter? And that works incredibly well for some shows. Like, I can tell that whenever Dan Larson puts out a video online, that he has made sure that he has his facts, he has a script, because he puts in the errors of him misreading the script. So you could tell that he has written down all of his facts and prepared everything. And it shows because of the quality, the high quality that those episodes are. But whenever I started writing things down for myself, I almost felt like, for me, I was hiding behind it. So, in a live setting, whenever I would write things down for a panel, I would almost be sitting there reading. So I realized that live, I needed to have those bullet points. And those live panels I did then were kind of informing the way that I was putting together my articulated points episodes as well. Because like I said, I will sometimes just drone on for 45 minutes trying to get across what I need to say in 10 minutes, and then I'll cut it down. But I do that by having bullet points that I want to make sure that I touch on each time. And that's kind of how I try to make sure that I'm mentioning every single thing. But yeah, I look at other channels, and I wish that I could get things to look as good and be as informative as Toy Galaxy. That's not going to happen anytime soon, but I really like having the space on YouTube to put something that I'm excited about out there. And sometimes I learn more or go further down that path whenever I'm trying to make sure that I have all the facts. Like I did one on crash dummies. I don't know if you saw that one, but Tycho's Incredible Crash Dummies is an incredibly interesting toy line. And I did know some stuff about it. I had some borrowed pre-production things actually for that one. And as I was putting that together, and I did, it wasn't like I didn't experience that toy line as it was out. I did. But then looking behind the story of the PSAs and things, I did learn a little more as I was putting that episode together. And it has kind of reignited an interest in that toy line for me and my brother.
Well, I'll tell you this thing. I have my notes right here. I always write down bullet points and I always have them in front of me. So the main reason why I don't need to look at it to read it, I just need to like glance over at it to make sure that I covered all the things I wanted to cover. And it's just there for like a kind of a reference type thing. But we all do things differently, you know. I would love to have my show as polished as Chris McLeod, but it's never going to be that because I'm not Chris McLeod. I'm David Allen.
He has everything so well together. It has been really nice to also see how he kind of does things because he's very prepared. He's extremely prepared. You know, he has his way that he prepares his documents, and he has his images in order, and he has his section that he's going to read to kind of do an intro, and then the free form discussion. So he knows what he's doing. He's had it together for a long time.
Well, and that's why there's no way that I could ever try to make what I do like what he is. My thing is completely different because I needed my own identity, just like Articulate Points is your own and Philip's identity. When you start trying to copy people and try to mimic what another person's doing, it comes off very fake and very disingenuous. Right. So you have to do it based on your own personality, your own qualities and stuff like that in your personality and things. So that's why mine's is totally different. And people have enjoyed what I'm doing, and that's great. I have my own slice of the fandom, and he has his, and you have yours, and we all have our different things that we do. But yeah, I think that's the thing about it. You have to have your own identity. And I think you've done very good. You and Philip have done very good with Articulated Points.
I appreciate that. Yeah. That's actually how I met Chris McLeod. Was he was doing a panel, and it was so well put together on Action Force. Because I've always been interested in Action Force. I did, like, some people find out about Action Force after the fact, and that's totally understandable. The internet didn't. I mean, there were bulletin board systems and things like that, but it wasn't all that accessible in the 90s. But you know, I was aware of it because of there being a little bit of published work actually on international GI Joe around the world. So I was familiar with Action Force, say maybe around 90, 91. I became aware that it existed and became interested. So I was at JoeCon. There was going to be an Action Force panel. I went to it, and it was Chris McLeod and Dave Tree. And that panel was so well put together. Like after it, I talked to Chris and was like, this thing was amazing. He did such a good job, because he did. And so I've known him since then.
Action Force is the same with me. I barely knew about it because I knew that the G.I. Joe European Missions comic was come out, and it was based on a comic series from England. So I knew that it existed because there was ads and there was things like that. But just a very peripheral across the board. And then when I went to my first JoeCon in 2010 or whatever, then I saw that there were toys and there was other stuff, and there was versions of the cartoons that weren't in our country. Sergeant Slammer was over there, and so on and so forth. And then the Tiger Force was different. So as I got more deep into it, I learned, okay, this is its own entire thing over there. They have just as much stuff as we do, if not more. Excuse me. And so I was the same way. And
that early stuff too, like I get that from the perspective of if you were an Action Force collector with the Red Shadows era and the Even before that, like I believe it was 82, the Action Force figures actually predate the Red Shadows and the like the SAS Force and the Q Force era.
Yeah.
If you're a collector of those, I see how you just may view that as blending right into GI Joe. But for me, whenever I first discovered those figures like Red Laser and Red Jackal and Jammer and Coral, like I almost am sad that it turned into just straight into GI Joe because I would love more of that.
Yeah. Well, it had its own identity in the beginning. It just kind of morphed into a British GI Joe towards the end. Not that there's anything wrong with some of that stuff, you know, it's unique and cool stuff. And I've been learning a lot about it in the Action Force books from Patty Lennon and Brian Hickey and David
Yeah,
McDonald. And they're awesome. I've learned so much about that stuff. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the earlier stuff had its own identity, even though it was only 5 POA. I think it was still pretty good stuff. It was unique, definitely
yeah.
unique.
The theme is a lot of fun, and the idea that there was another a whole other force that was going to come out. Maybe they could have kept on doing that, coming out with like new themes and new sculpts to blend in with that. Bob Breakin, he definitely had an eye for toy making. Like some of the best GI Joe stuff in the 12-inch era was actually coming from Action Man. So uh, it's always the UK stuff has always um, been an enhancement to the entire brand on a global level, even if you weren't aware of what they were putting out. And due to that, I think that's the creativity that went into all of that. I think shines in those first couple of years of Action Force. And yeah, I really would love to see, what would it have looked like if instead of transitioning over to just the same GI Joe figures, what would have happened with those 1983 and 84 figures if those had been recolors and maybe mixed up and things done with them in order to incorporate those into the Action Force versus Red Shadows theme instead of the Action Force slash GI Joe kind of thing in Cobra.
Well,
So it's a neat thing to think about.
there may very be some light at the end of that tunnel that you just walked into, Pat, because I believe that Ben and Mark and their team on Skeletron is going to continue the Skeletron program with some other stuff, and maybe some of that stuff. Since the licensing and all that is gone, they got the Skeletron license and the Roboskull 2 Mark II. They have the license for that, so there may be some of those canceled licenses out there. I don't know how it would work with Hasbro, but there's a lot of that stuff that is out there that I'm sure that there's somebody out there that's looking at it.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. I would have loved to have had it in 1983 and 1984 as well. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting that new Robo Skull. The original Robo Skull, I mean,
I can't get one either.
well, I have one.
You do?
Uh, yeah, I have an original Robo. Like I was interested in Action Force early on, so I went after a lot of the figures. I think that I'm missing a couple of German figures because the German figures were a little bit different the the figures anywhere else, like the way that they were themed and the tampos that are on them and that sort of thing. So I really need to get my Action Force stuff out to see what I have and don't have. But I know that I have a Robo Skull because that thing was just so interesting that I did go when I was going to JoeCon the first couple of years. There was always kind of a Robo Skull around. I didn't buy one though because you know how you're watching how much money you're spending and just trying to focus on what you focus on. But it got to be a few years into it, and it's just like if I don't get one now, I'm probably never going to get one. And so there was one year where I did buy a Robo Skull, and I don't think I would have gotten one after that because after that was whenever the price of them kind of blew up.
Yeah, trying to get one now is like about 650 to 750, and that's uh Mostly complete out of the box loose, that's about 650 to 750. I
Yeah.
saw, I think it was 2 years ago at Joe Fest, there was three different ones at different price points. One was like 450, one was like 550, one was like 650 or 650, 750, whatever. Different levels of completion. I was like, God, I'm never gonna get that.
Yeah, if you want yourself a Robo Skull and you're going to a big show, you kind of want to rush to the Roma booth, Roma Collectibles. Aaron is a huge fan of Robo Skulls, and he tries to put them together and put them out there for people to get them at conventions. So you might find one at Toy Department, but Roma is really the guy who's passionate about that Robo Skull and wants them to be as available as possible at his booth. And that's probably his booth that you're talking about, I think.
Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago. I think
Yeah.
it might have been him that had three different versions, or
Yeah, that would be Aaron at Roma. He would have had them because he loves some Robo Skull. I think whenever I bought mine, I did get it from Toy Department. I think at the time it was probably like 125 bucks or something like that, loose complete. Yeah, it wasn't like they've gone up now, because I think as time progressed and a lot of people filled in what they wanted from the vintage GI Joe collection, that thing just, whenever you see it, it's like, what is that? And then you start to see the play features that are on it too, like, because it has a lot of different things that it does, and it's a really appealing one. And I could see why, supply and demand, and the demand has just gone up and up and up as more people have become aware of it and want one.
And that's another thing too. The community is much, much bigger than it was when I was
Oh yeah.
getting into it in 2010, and I'm sure it's gone up way more since you've been and started in the community. But the good thing about that is you can reach out to people in other countries. Blackburn
Yeah.
over there in England is a huge action force guy, and you can get some stuff over there. And if you keep your ears open, there's other people over there too. You don't necessarily have to go through Blackburn. You don't necessarily have to go through the normal channels. You just got to be friendly with people online and talk to people. And sometimes people are willing to, trade with you and go out and find you things in other countries and send them to you. And then you send them stuff from this country that they can't get. So there's a lot of avenues to get this stuff.
Yeah, I think people tend to forget that where they are is just as unique as anywhere else, and they can be helpful. I try to take that approach with everything. Like, I don't know how many times I go to the store looking for new GI Joes, and the shelves are a mess. And there was a couple times where I realized if I clear up this shelf and like put things back in the pegs, maybe I'm going to find the thing that I'm looking for underneath here. And sometimes that would actually happen, especially in the 25th era. Like, the figures would just be a mess. You'd walk into Walmart or Target, and I try to put things back up on the pegs, because it's always my feeling that if you're being polite in that way, the people stocking the shelves maybe would take notice of that and kind of help you out a little bit too. So I think that that's true online. It's true in person. That if you just try to be the positive force, it will come back.
Being friendly and amenable gets you so much farther than being full of vitriol and disdain for whatever anybody's doing. If you go on somebody's Kickstarter, or you go on somebody's podcast, or you go on somebody's website, and all you do is spout negativity, you're just going to get negativity back. Most people, when they talk positively, if they have a good attitude and they're friendly and outgoing in this community, they get a treasure trove of responses and interaction and stuff like that. I feel that is how I was treated when I joined the community. People just came out. They came up to me and say, "Hey, I haven't seen you before. You're new." I said, "Yeah, I'm new. This is my first JoeCon. My name is David. Hi, how are you?" "Oh, I'm Bobby Hoth," or "I'm this person, I'm that person." I had people giving me stuff for free that I never even asked for. One of my best friends in this community today, I mentioned to somebody, "Yeah, I'm looking for such and such." He went around the show, found it, bought it, gave it to me. I was like, I didn't ask for that. He just did it on his own because he was trying to be a cool person and a nice person and knew that I needed something. That's this community. That's the people that I've had contact with when I've been talking to people and been involved with a lot of stuff now. And I'm getting much more involved, obviously, with everything that I'm doing with shows and my shows and things like that, and my programs that I put out there and stuff. And I've seen people like you on different podcasts and met you guys and go up to you and say, man, great job. And I enjoyed this. And that's how you become friends with people.
Yeah, that's what I met you right away one year at Joe Fest. What, I don't remember what year that was.
It was 2 years ago.
21?
It was Joe Fest 2021.
2021. Yeah.
It was the first time we met in person.
Yeah. But yeah, like you're saying, you know, it comes back. Sometimes not instantly, though. There's been some times where, you know, we would be putting together yojo.com and people just kind of assumed that everything was being sent to us, that all the figures were being shipped to us by Hasbro, and that we would even have advanced access to things, and that you know, it should be like the instant that a figure hits the shelf, Yojo should have the information online. Sometimes that just wasn't the case, because if something was popular, it's just as hard for us to find it as it was anyone else.
Trust me.
You know, you had to go out there and buy it. And, you know, sometimes you had your pre-orders, but things get just as expensive for the people working behind Yojo. And it's just sometimes whenever we would be putting that together, people would complain whenever things weren't up right away. But in the end, you know, over time, eventually you would get that feedback from the people who are like, no, this is amazing. I love this as a resource. You know, and in general now it's like, well, it's sad that there's not more, because of course we can't add to it. But yeah, it's weird how you put those positive things out there. And even the Crash Dummies episode, like we were talking about, I got an incredibly nice compliment. But part of putting these videos online is the assumption that they're just going to live online, you know, for a while, and that maybe I won't hear back from everybody right away. But it is nice whenever I put a video online to get that instant feedback, so that I know how I'm doing for maybe making a next episode or things that people aren't interested in. And, you know, it's sometimes things just, you know, get feedback much later. I can't expect somebody who's a big fan of Crash Dummies to instantly find that episode. But whenever he did, he sent a lot of great feedback that just made me feel good about having put that out there. And, you know, there are other episodes too. The Starcom one keeps getting hits and keeps getting comments. So it is nice to hear from people. Like I always say, hey, we appreciate the comments. I do appreciate the comments. It's interaction online has changed so much over the years. You know, a long time ago, it was all forums, and even before that, it was all the news groups. But I felt like at that time, I could get home from work and look at all the topics that there were to read about G.I. Joe online. And I probably was, because I would hit up joecustoms.com, I would hit up Yojo, and I would hit up the news groups. And I had several news groups at the time. And I think I really was taking in everything G.I. Joe that was being put online on a daily basis. But now, you know, we're all on Facebook, and it's so much information going out that, you know, if I'm lucky, something that I'm interested in, somebody may know that and may tag me. And then hopefully I can find it again if I go visit it once, you know. So putting out articulated points, we also wanted to have something that was able to be findable online by people well after the fact. So that's kind of part of the reason for doing something like that.
And that's true. You're right about that, because sometimes I'll be going through my YouTube feed or whatever to see what new stuff, and then I'll get an old episode of Articulate Points or Full Force or this or that, and I'll be like, did I watch that? So I'll start it over and start watching for like 20 minutes. Oh yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But StarCom, there's an actual underground fan base that you probably are not aware of. I know a lot of people that are huge StarCom fans. It's one of those brands that is not a vocal brand out there. It's not like G.I. Joe or Transformers or Master of the Universe or Star Wars or even Star Trek. It's an underground fandom. But now that I'm not sure if you're aware of this, because you were probably at the panel where Operation Longbow 2 years ago at Joe Fest, they did their panel and they showed that they got the license for StarCom,
Hmm.
but their StarCom is going to be 4 inches, not 2.5 inches, I think, or
That
whatever.
sounds like a recipe for success to me. I'd be really interested to see what they can do. I'm right now, as far as Longbow goes, the sales for that just opened up. So if you missed out on the Kickstarter, I think you can actually just pre-order things now. I think they're in the pre-order period. And I did go in on the Kickstarter for that. So I just filled out my what the backer kit. I just filled that out last night. So I'm excited for that stuff to come out. But I've been a Starcom fan forever. 1998, I think it was, we started putting together Starcom information. There was me and two other guys. One of them was a web developer, and he was like, "Hey, I'd like to make a Starcom website." And I was like, "Great! I have a bunch of Starcom stuff, and I'm super passionate about the characters, the cartoon, and the toys." And he was like, "Great! So you probably can help me make sure it's fully organized." I was like, "Awesome!" And then there was another guy who's from Canada, and he had some stuff that we didn't have and some information. And so the three of us put together a website, and he maintained it for years. And now I keep it online. I registered the domain starcomhq.com. That's not what the original name of the site was. And you can kind of tell that as you go through it because it desperately needs to be updated. I have not gotten to it. There's always a different project for me to do. I need to do an articulated points video this month. One of us does. I have an idea for one, so I'm probably going to put that together. Whether or not that's me this month or Philip this month, still don't know. I need to prepare for my panel still for assembly required, and that is not something that we just do overnight. We don't do that in a week. We give that quite a lot of time to try to make sure that we look over it for facts to make sure that it's presented well as not missing some things that are fun that would be enjoyable to put out there. So my time is not an easy thing to come by sometimes. So I would like to put it more out there for Starcom, and I love Starcom. I don't know. I think that there's an appeal to just magnets. Have you heard of the Mattleman line from Spain? Have you ever heard of that toy line?
Barely, vaguely, yes.
Oh, if you like magnets in the feet of figures, in space figures, the Mattleman line is a 4-inch line that's also amazing. They've got like these aliens where there's actually a magnet embedded in their chest, and then it goes on a post up to their face, and their face is in like a space helmet. And whenever you try to detect if he's an alien or not, the face will spin around, like because of the magnet. And then some of the figures do have magnets in their shoes. The weight of them makes it a little bit hard to always stick them to a refrigerator or whatever. But yeah, it's magnets and toys is fun. The most recent time that I got more Starcom stuff was yesterday. So that tells you. And I already have one of every vehicle, but my brother was like, "Hey, I found you some more Starcom." It's like, sweet. So yeah, I love Starcom.
I know a member of the community is a big StarCom collector. She has a toy store in Georgia,
Okay.
Full Circle Toys. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Kelly Mix. Well, she has a
No, I
big
don't think so.
StarCom collection. I doubt she has anything that you need, but sometimes those resources are out there for a reason where you can check on them. You never know, there might be a variation. I watched your episode about StarCom, and I learned more about StarCom watching that than I did as a child watching the cartoons and getting the toys, because I had the toys and watched the cartoon as a child, but I don't have any of that stuff now.
Oh, it's so much fun. And at the time, I knew that it was difficult to find. I had a store near me called Hills Department Stores, one of my favorite chains. Like I really love Hills. The building is entirely gone now, which is sad. But yeah, they had all of the first series Starcom stuff. However, they didn't have the later stuff. And I can remember being at like a closeout store and finding a tornado gunship. And I didn't buy it that day because back in the 80s, if you saw a new toy on the shelves, you just kind of thought, oh, this is the first that I'm going to see. I'm going to see all kinds of stuff after this. I saw that one tornado gunship. I never saw another thing. That thing must have sold because I went back to find it later. Because you don't think, oh, I have to beg to get this today. Because I was a little kid. I should have because I never saw one again, but I didn't think I needed to. And I thought, what else is out there? And then you think to yourself, well, the catalog. And I can remember even going online, like in the late 90s, and talking about Starcom and mentioning, oh, it's kind of like a space thing that looks like a helicopter, but without rotors, which is weird. But telling people about it and then being like, I've never heard of that. I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know
It was
why
the entire second and third series of Starcom that exists, internationally. It did come out a little bit in the United States that people just didn't know.
the cartoon was a big cartoon. It went for a while. It was based on a lot of Japanimation style, and that was hugely popular in the 80s. But I
Yeah,
wanted to
it was
touch on
done
a
by
couple.
Geek, and the Young Astronauts Council was helping to make all of that happen. And it was a good cartoon. I really liked it.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was one season, but there's a story
Felt
Bible
like it
for it.
went forever. That's the thing
Yeah,
with cartoons in the 80s. They had 65 episode seasons, and today that'd be like 3 seasons.
yeah. Starcom though is like 13. It's not really super long, but some of the episodes are really good. Maybe it's longer than that, and I'm just mistaken. It doesn't feel like it's very long though. But there is the story Bible that was written for the show. That if you're interested in more about Starcom, I would recommend going to starcomhq.com and looking for the story Bible specifically,
Okay.
because there's just a lot to read and it makes more sense of the episodes that are out there and kind of gives you a hint of where else the show is going to go.
Ah, pretty cool. Thank you very much for that. I
Mhm.
wanted to touch on a couple of the points you talked about a little while ago. Um, for those that aren't aware, I have my daytime career is at a big box store, and
Okay.
I can attest to what Pat's saying. If you are going to a store and you help the employees and you help the people working at the store fix things, because in the toy department in big box stores, the children don't care. The
No.
mom and dads don't care what the children are doing. It's basically they're in Disneyland and they're running around like crazy. They tear up the place, they take stuff down. That's why we need associates in order to fix the aisles and stuff. So any collectors that are watching this, uh, they appreciate that. They appreciate whatever you can do to fix stuff, put it back, because that's less work that they have to do, and they constantly have to do that probably every hour, run through the aisles and try to fix everything because of the Rugrats tearing it all up. And another point is, with my experience, even trying to do it that way, with my experience in where I work on during the day, it is difficult to get modern things complete. And so online really is the best place to go. Unfortunately, it was never like that in years past. You could just go and buy stuff and it wasn't a big deal. Maybe Hot
Yeah.
Wheels was a big deal, but nothing else was a big deal. You could easily go and find any Transformer, any Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, any G.I. Joe, any movie related property, Batman, Jurassic Park, you name it, Robin Hood, all that stuff. During those years, you could find it very easily. But today, with the situation we're in nowadays with the supply chain and things like that, it is very difficult. That is one of the primary reasons I've been wanting to have a discussion with my colleague over at the Full Force about this sort of stuff, and really do maybe a discussion with them on a monthly or something, because a lot of people don't know a lot of the ins and outs of this stuff that I would love to really put out there to dispute some of the rumors and how people think things are done, that it's not done that way. And it's the same way if you talk to these Hasbro guys, how people used to claim things were, the Hasbro people were doing this or doing that, but they have all these rules and things that they have to follow, and there's certain reasons why they do the things that they do, and people that are fans, generic fans that don't know the ins and outs, they'll criticize, and I'm like, you don't have any business criticizing other than you want to be negative. Find out the facts, learn like I've learned, or ask someone, and then you'll find out the truth. So
I'm also always curious how things have changed, like not just to learn how they are now. Now we hear about mod resets and all of the street dates and all that sort of information. I think probably back in the 80s, that didn't really exist so much. And I think that a lot of us have that mindset of, toys show up to store, toys go on the shelves, and that's it. Because I mean, looking back at like some of those displays, especially of Toys R Us, like there are those old pictures of Toys R Us from like 1985, and there's just a stack of Sky Strikers all the way to the ceiling for ready for the holiday season, and
aisles full.
Yeah, it's these toys now, like we're used to all of them being placed upright, like face forward, but you could tell back then they were just trying to fit as many as they could, so they had them stacked, and it's just like shelves packed ready for the demand. I can only imagine how different things were from then to now, like if you really worked in a toy store over that time.
That's the one thing I would do if I had a time machine. I would go back to the 80s. I would relive the 80s and just come forward with all my stuff to the present and like quadruple my price on what I spent. And even then it would be still a steal, because a Sky Striker was what, $20, $25. Then you could charge $100 and make 4 times your money back.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we got to think about inflation too. Like, what was that price in today money? Like, some of those things just were not cheap. Yeah. Like, buying a USS Flag in the 80s and storing
$75.
What?
$75 for a flag in the 80s.
Yeah, but like the cost of that's 1980s money. I haven't done the translation of what that costs now. To spend like that much, I'm sure it's in the hundreds.
Yeah.
So to spend hundreds of dollars and then to take several USS Flags and store them, what would the cost of storage be for 40 years of USS Flag storage? It just not always that realistic to think about going back. It's fun to think about. I know for me, I would like some pictures of the stores that I went into, because there's one toy store in particular that was, I don't want to call it a local chain. I think they only had like 3 locations, which is a chain, but it's not like a chain of stores as people think of them today. But I can find 0 pictures of it online. Like, it was a store called Toy World, which I think there were probably a lot of Toy Worlds, because in advertisement then I noticed it would be called Max Toy World, MAC''S. I could find nothing of it online. And I loved going there as a kid because they always had the most obscure stuff.
It could have been a franchise, because in New Hampshire, when I was growing up, I grew up where Justin Bell grew up in New Hampshire.
Okay.
From about 9 or 8 till I was 16. So I had all my youth basically there, other than the first 9 years I grew up in Massachusetts. But they had a chain or franchise, whatever you want to call it, called Child's World. But Child's World, I think it was bigger, and I'm not sure if Toy World was like an off of
No.
Child's
Toy World wasn't part of Child's World, because because Child World was, for me, what I had as Children's Palace. Eventually, those two combined. Yeah, Toy World I know was something separate though because it existed at the same time as Children's Palace, which I don't remember if Child World bought Children's Palace or the other way around, but they eventually combined. And when I say eventually, I think that was actually early '80s. I think there's a Wikipedia for all of it. I love the fact that those things had a mascot too, like Peter. I think it's Peter the Panda.
Well, that's
Child
it.
World.
That's exactly right. It was a big castle, right? There was a
Yeah,
big panda in the front of it, and then blocks, and then I think there was a lizard somewhere in their construction. So it was all these things: blocks, a lizard, a panda. So it was covering
yeah,
different things like infant toys, like
yep,
kids' toys, and then action figures was the dinosaur, dragon, or whatever it was, Godzilla, or whatever it was, and that's what it was. But I could never realize figure out where exactly it was. It was in New Hampshire because that's where I got all my original GI Joes from, and it was like
okay.
right down the block from my house. I could walk to it. I was so close to it. But I don't know if they had franchises in different states that were owned by different people. Like a McDonald's is, you can do a franchise. A different person can buy
Yeah, I
the
don't think they
rights.
were franchised. There is a Wikipedia. I have looked that up on that one in particular because the big stores for me as a kid, like I said, Hills was a really big one. They were a general department store, but whenever they would say Hills is where the toys are, they meant it. Like they had tons of different brands would go through that toy store. It wasn't the same as going into a Kmart, which I did have Kmart at the time, but it wasn't as good as Hills as far as finding toys. I did not have Walmart or Target in my area as a kid because Walmart didn't hit this area until the mid 90s and Target not until the late 90s. So I just did not have those at all.
Well,
I had,
Target had a different name in the 80s.
oh,
It was
really?
Yeah, it was a different company. They morphed and became Target in I think the early 90s, but their company has existed before that and they were called something else. I can't remember the exact name of it because we had one between Nashua and Derry, the two towns that I traveled to between in New Hampshire. And there was one right in the middle, right near the movie theater that we would always ride our bikes to when we were kids, and that's a whole thing. I loved going to see movies in the 80s. But yeah,
Yeah.
so they didn't have the same name. So they existed. So they might have been where you were, but they changed their name and they became Target in the early 90s.
I'm gonna have to look that up because I'm curious to see if any of the other previous names would have been them. It's always weird to me. Well, I mean, I guess they had to have existed in the late '80s because there's a Target exclusive Hit and Run from 1988, and it's always weird to me whenever I do see old price tags on older toys that are stores that I'm familiar with, but from way before I was familiar with them. I didn't even have a Toys R Us in the area. I knew about Toys R Us because they would have commercials on TV,
No.
but there wasn't one in the area until I want to say 1987. So like the original run, early GI Joes, we never had Special Mission Brazil anywhere around here. Like you don't even find those. I never found those at a flea market because there was no Toys R Us in the area, so kids just didn't have them. Night Force, on the other hand, is a different story. That was in abundance in this area because it was a new store. The stores were new in the area in 1987. So whenever that 88 or later stuff came out, it was still a hopping place where a lot of stuff was being sent, I think. So yeah, we had tons of that in the area, but yeah, we had Children's Palace early on, and I had Toy World. Those were like the two toys only stores, and then Hills was really good to go to.
We did have Toys R Us. I think there was one in Massachusetts where I grew up, and then there was one in New Hampshire, but it was in Manchester. So they were far apart. You would have to travel numerous hours between the two of them if you wanted to go to them. So that's why I went to Children's World or Child's World, whatever you want to call it, because it was right down
Yeah.
the street from my house. But I want to get back to the subject on at hand. Uh, so how do you come up with the subjects for your articulated points? I know you were talking about it a little bit, and you and Phil sometimes go back and forth. You saying that you have a new topic that's coming up and stuff like that. Is it difficult?
Yes. Uh, there are months where it feels like we are, really go doing our own thing super enthusiastically, and then other months where you've got life intervening or work that you're focused on, and in those months it's nice that I almost feel like it makes me focus on doing something fun for myself that month. But other months where it's like, oh, I've got a few different ideas for something. And sometimes the good thing is whenever, if we don't have any idea at all of what we're going to do for the month, Philip and I will just kind of chat on like Skype or something like that. And through having a conversation for maybe half an hour, one of us will mention something, and it's like, that's a topic that could be fun. And some of our topics have been better than others. Some of them have been more of a more fruitful for us. Whenever you start doing a topic and you're like, oh, that'll be good to add in. That'll be good to add in. That's a lot easier than whenever you find that it's a specific thing that you're just going to talk about briefly. I'm horrible in that even whenever it's something small, like I think I did the new figures showing up to Disney parks for Star Wars.
I like that.
Somehow I just kept on talking, and it ended up being like 12 minutes that I cut down from like 40 again. But yeah, it's sometimes difficult to come up with a topic. One time I put out a video about Ace, a pre-production Ace figure. And the inspiration of that, of course, was everybody was talking about Ace with the Sky Striker HasLab at the time. So it was like, oh yeah, people are interested in Ace right now. This is just going to be something people are going to appreciate. So part of it is just trying to look at things and realize, oh, maybe that isn't something that people have seen.
Putting content out there, you don't always, the more you do it, the more you get an idea that there's people watching, and it can influence the community and people that are watching. And that thing with Ace, people were aware of that situation with Ace, but I think after your episode, and if you try to find like Ace figures nowadays, or Sky Strikers or Night Boomers, God, I think it like quadrupled after that video. And I'm not sure if you're even aware of it, but the community now has picked up on that. And that is a highly sought after commodity.
Yeah, the gray, that Ace has gone up a lot in value. I think the unique one that I really showed was the pre-production one, but I don't know. I think I thought that figure was kind of skyrocketing. That figure was on his way up for a while, and I think that figure stands to show, the gray one stands to show that there's a lot of value in making the O-ring line again. Personally, like I said, I collect 3 3/4 inch and 4-inch. If I were to have my best of both worlds, I would have both of those existing again in some form. I love the fact that Hasbro is getting the O-ring stuff off the ground. And it does kind of feel like they are kind of looking at that again and refocusing it. I think that whenever the Sky Striker hits, I'm hoping, like whenever it ships, that's when I'm hoping that we get the O-ring figures more regularly, because Duke and Cobra Commander are about to start shipping. But what is that, third set in over a year? It's doing 2 sets a year just isn't that much.
Well, if you look at it from that aspect, yes. But if you look at it from the Sky Striker HasLab till now, there's about 18 new O-ring figures in that entire series.
But not in hand.
Year one. Huh?
Not in hand yet. I want them in my hands and on my shelf.
So you can consider this like year one of the 2022 O-ring collection, because there are vehicles, there are combos, there's 2-packs, there are HasLabs, there's all these things. But yeah, you're right. Very few of them are actually in your hand. You have the Storm Shadow Snake Eyes 2-pack and the Soldier Trooper 2-pack. And then, like you said, the Duke and Cobra Commander are about to ship. I got my notification yesterday that it's going to be shipping. And so you're right about that. But some people actually have the Hiss Baroness Megatron crossover.
Oh, that's
That's
true. Yeah,
actually out in
yeah.
certain
In certain
places.
areas. I don't
Uh,
have mine yet, but I eventually will. You're right. That thing I should expect that to ship before too long. Yeah, I'm not saying that in a negative way. I think that the Sky Striker going the fact that it's not in hand anywhere yet is the opportunity for some momentum for that. And a lot of times when I see people talk about the O-ring line, they're like, I don't want O-rings, I want 4-inch. Well, I've always kind of felt like both of them can exist together. They are two very, very different styles of figures.
and Hasbro is capable of doing this. You're a
Yeah,
Transformers guy, and I have my involvement in Transformers in my own way. And there's like 6 different lines at
yeah,
retail. 6 different lines. There's the 86 line, there's the different cartoon lines, the movie lines, this line, that line.
yeah.
It's
You
about six
usually have
different.
your line
Well,
focused for kids, like the
yeah,
Cyberverse line.
if they can
Your
do that with
line focused for
Transformers,
collectors.
why
Yeah,
can't they do 3 lines for GI Joe? That doesn't make sense.
yeah, right, exactly. I agree, and I think that a nice focus on O rings, and I don't like. Really looking forward to Duke and Cobra Commander because those feel like new figures to me. I'm looking forward to Stalker because Stalker's one that breaks so easily from the vintage line. But is other than Stalker, I'm not as interested in the ones that are essentially reissues as much as I am ones like Duke and Cobra Commander that feel like we're getting those figures again, but they are infusing them with some new stuff.
Well,
Like
yeah,
Cobra Commander has this cartoon rifle and a cartoon deco, and Duke has a cartoon deco. Like that's more what I want to see.
but the other ones have other new things too. Obviously, their packaging and they have a lot more accessories than the
Yeah.
originals did. They also have the silicone O-rings. They
Mhm.
have the PVC hands that makes them flexible to hold the guns so their thumbs don't break. There's the wrists are more something with the wrist where the wrist twists or something like that. Now,
No, it's that whole forearm is made from a more forgiving plastic, so that you're
right.
not going to be breaking off the thumbs. And I would also add to that and say that it's a much easier way of finding a nice white storm shadow is if
Oh,
you buy the new one.
definitely. Because the plastic they use has what, some sort of, not iron, but some sort of magnesium or something in the original plastic, and that's why it
Uh,
yellows. And in England in Action Force they didn't use as much magnesium or whatever that metal was. That's why theirs don't yellow.
yeah, I think that it was something to prevent it from being so flammable that gets added to all of the toys. From what I've read, there's a lot of speculation and fan theory, but most of us aren't actual chemists. I've read one actual article that was not specific to toys. Actually, it was, I think, specific to like monitors and other things. That it makes sense if you have an old computer monitor that they're going to want to make that not super flammable plastic on the outside.
Right.
So that would be why a monitor would yellow so easily
For the heat.
if that ingredient is what is causing plastic to yellow. So I think that's why Storm Shadow yellows. And my friend Brian Coffin and I have often talked about it. And we both are kind of the opinion that if you have a nice white Storm Shadow, it's probably from later in the line or it's from Europe. Because more often than not, that was early on, that was where they were more easily found, were the later ones. I kind of feel like almost every 84 Storm Shadow from the United States, most of them have had some degree of yellowing.
Well, the thing about Storm Shadow, he is the longest running first run figure in the
Yeah.
entire Hasbro 92 to 94 line. He went 6 years. There were different releases of that figure over a 6 year period. So
Well,
no
six
other
years
figure does.
internationally, I think, right?
Huh?
6 years internationally, I think, because
No,
I think it
six
wasn't
years
be
in
available.
America. In
I don't think it was
America.
quite that long because he came out, what, in 84? That would make him released all the way through 90. I think that he was just 84, 85, 86. I don't know that there's an 87 Storm Shadow, maybe. But yeah, he was available for a long time. you may even be thinking of six or seven different card backs, because of course throughout each of those years they had card back changes and special offers and things like that. So it's quite abundant of a number of them to buy. Yeah, he definitely was one of the most popular figures from the original run for a good reason. I love that figure.
Yeah, he's an excellent figure, and he's one of the most popular characters,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah.
So we keep getting off track from the topic, but so you have coming up a new coming episode. You do new episodes every month, or is it just based on when you have an idea? Because I've watched every episode of yours, and sometimes I really get a lot out of the episodes, and sometimes I'm like, like
Yeah.
Philip did the Flame Toys Snake Eyes model. I had already did a video of that myself prior to that, so it wasn't something I got much. I watched it because I wanted to see if there's
Yeah.
anything else, but I didn't get as much out of that one as I do a lot of these other
Right.
ones, because I do get a lot out of most of the episodes that you guys put out there.
Yeah, we try to put one out at least every month, and then it has become that it is just once a month. I would love to have it be more often than that, but I'm trying not to put out videos that don't include as much as I can, and that makes it really difficult to get one done, because the time that it takes to think of a topic, to film myself talking about the topic, and then get all of the pictures that I need to put in there. Sometimes I have a toy to show, but I don't have any pictures of it. So then I need to take the pictures. Sometimes I need to edit those pictures in order to make them be not too dark to put on the picture, or framed correctly, or I took the picture and I'm not a good photographer, so a lot of times it'll be blurry and I'll have to retake a photo. So, and then sometimes scanning. Sometimes it's like, well, there's a catalog or an insert or something that we need a scan of, and it's like, well, I got to go to the scanner. So I have to take pictures, take scans, edit those, film the thing, edit the video, put in the things. It can take very easily, several nights of a whole week just to do one video. And I can't make it so that every day that I come home from work, I'm only working on articulated points. I need time for other things. I like to take in a movie. I like to watch some stuff, TV episodes, things like that. I need to unwind. So I would love to have more time to put into it, but it can be really time consuming. So we've been trying to put out at least one a month. I would like to do it more frequently, maybe refine my process in order to make it go faster.
That's interesting. The process that you guys go through, and obviously the stuff that Chris does, I can't do that. I'm not that technically savvy. That's why I do my stuff the way that I do it, because I just can't do all that. You guys have more a passion for and time that you're willing to put into this than for the technical aspects. My technical prowess.
Chris is a true professional too. That's important to keep in mind, that video editing is something that he's always been capable of doing. For me, it's an interest, but I had never used Adobe Premiere until I sat down. Not to make. I had used it prior to Articulated Points, but it was to edit some stuff just to learn the software so that I could eventually do Articulated Points. That was kind of the learning that we needed to go through. And we learned quite a lot in those early episodes of some of the troubles that you go through on the technical end of things. And, it's amazing. If it weren't for Philip, we probably still wouldn't have anything online, because Philip was the one that just kept on telling me, no, it doesn't need to be 100% perfect. As soon as we start, we will try to have good information. And if we have a few hiccups here and there, it's fine. We just need to get something online. Once we get used to doing it, it will get better. And he was right. I have a tendency to put things off because I look at it and go, that's not good enough. Don't put it online. But Philip makes sure that I don't do that. He has made sure that we got started to begin with.
Well, and see, I understand what you're saying and what Philip's saying, but I can understand both sides of it because
Yeah,
the only time I will edit something or fix something is if it's absolutely abysmal. I have no choice. If I don't fix it, I'm going to look like a complete idiot putting myself out there. And that's the only time that I'll edit something. And it's happened a couple of times with little things. I put an interview up with Arthur Burkhart a few weeks ago, and that interview was a disaster. Not due to me, but because of the situation we were in, the conditions of the situation around us, it didn't come off as professionally as I like to make my videos. I like to be professional and talk to people and have a nice environment, comfortable and calm and stuff like that. We're in the middle of a convention, at the end of a convention, 3-day weekend. You were at that show. It was a very long convention. Even
yeah,
though it was 3 days, it felt like we were there a week because there was so much stuff going on and so much. And maybe it's just me because I was doing so much more than the average person there. But
no, you're very busy. Yeah,
so I put the video out there because I don't do this for any kind of professional satisfaction. I'm doing this for fun. I'm trying to contribute to the community. I want to be a part of the community, and this is how I'm contributing and being a part of it. So I put this stuff out for fun. So it doesn't have to be 100% perfect in my mind.
right.
But that interview was really difficult, and a lot of people commented on that he was tired. He looked tired, and I'm like, yeah, we were all tired. We were all worn out. It was a long weekend. That was the end of the third day, obviously. And he's like 74 years old. So it was a difficult situation, but I put it out there. It is out there now. Whatever happens, happens. And I haven't gotten negative comments or anything like that, but people have picked up on the fact that he looks like he's tired. I'm like, yeah, because he is.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so that's
That's
an aspect of this type of stuff. And you talked about a little bit earlier about getting positive reviews and making sure that you guys look good and stuff like that, and trying to make sure that you don't get bad responses. Have you had any kind of difficult situations where you've had to deal with on there?
so far with articulated points, not really. We're small enough that maybe we're only finding the people who are already so passionate and forgiving. Because I go back to some of those earlier episodes, and there are some technical issues for sure. And I would like to find more time to have episodes that are both Philip and I at the same time. But scheduling is difficult. It's really hard to always find time with Philip, and then those episodes are harder to edit as well. Like if we're both talking, it is difficult to edit that and feel okay cutting out a chunk of it whenever it's both of us, because we're not always both putting in the same kind of we're not always on the same, well, I guess we usually are on the same wavelength, but there would be times where I would be doing an edit of one of those episodes and Philip had some good stuff to say, and I was like, well, I could cut me, but here Philip is saying something good. So it became a little bit more difficult to edit those ones. But I do want to do another one of those soon. Maybe we could go live more often. We've talked about some of that stuff, but yeah, we haven't really gotten a lot of negative feedback, thankfully. Constructive feedback, I do appreciate that. There have been some people who have said, well, this is good. This is what I like to see. And, we've tried to focus on that. But yeah, not a whole ton of negative stuff, thankfully.
Well, that's good. It is a good thing to get constructive feedback. I haven't had hardly any negative myself, other than that one interview I did with Arthur. And once in a while, I'll have an error or something on a comic review or what have you. People want
Mhm.
more content when I do product reviews. They want me to go into more of the stuff, and I'm like, well, I'm not a toy manufacturer. I'm not, that's not my thing. I show what I got. I talk about it because a lot of people talk about Hasbro products. There's not a lot of people talking about products outside of Hasbro, and that's what I focus on. I don't do the Hasbro normal chain because there's so many people doing it.
Yeah,
Like this that I have on here, Gear Homies. You guys talked about it in full force, but no one ever talked about anywhere else. It never was mentioned. So when I got mine, I said, let me do a video, let that get out there, and tons of people commented, and then there was a lot of those ads with the guy posting the Gear Homies stuff out there. I love them. I think they work really well and stuff, but that helped those products. I'm trying to help those products out that are licensee products, and so people were like, you need to talk about them more. I'm like,
is Gear Homies a licensee? I'm not real sure. Are they?
I
I
don't
don't
know.
really.
This is the Cobra logo. They can't
Yeah,
use the Cobra logo without the license.
unless it was just yeah, I don't know. I looking at their website, I wasn't really sure because there was a lot on there, but yeah, I do agree that some of that lesser known stuff, like I've tried including what was that helicopter? The stuff from
Um,
Forever.
Five
Yeah,
Below.
it is that. Like where's the
Oh,
Forever Clever
yeah,
or
Forever Clever. Yes, you did it,
there's
and
the
it like blew
building
up
brick.
and knocked your stuff over, right?
It did,
So when
yeah.
you did it, I went and got one of those, and I did a review outside of it, and it
That's
was really
probably a
good.
better idea than what I did.
Yeah, well, because I was like, well, I'm not going to put it in my collection. That's crazy. Pat's was crazy trying to do that inside his collection, and so I did
Yeah,
it outside, and people were very happy with that review of that because they could see it doing
that
stuff,
thing
and it was
actually functions really well.
yeah. I'm trying to
Surprisingly,
find those stupid gliders. I can't find them anywhere to do a review outside.
that actually reminds me. One of my friends picked those up for me, but I haven't seen him in over a month, so I still don't have them. Um, yeah, and then there's still Forever Clever supposed to do those like the Tomahawk, the not Lego, the building block set. There's some other stuff that should still be coming. I'm having a lot of trouble keeping up. There's a lot of stuff that's finally hitting, along with the stuff that was probably planned to hit now, and it's uh,
There
there's
is
a
a
lot.
lot of stuff. It's difficult. I consider myself an all-in collector, but even I have a limit. Like I don't get statues and I don't get those really expensive figures that are in the 200 range because it's just too much. I can only spend so much money, and I'm buying a lot of stuff to do videos and things like that. And
Yeah,
my level of commitment is like getting to the max point now, where I can't even get everything. So even as an all-in collector, I'm not an all-in collector because I can't get everything.
yeah, yeah. I can remember the first time that I even thought about like because I collect them all. It was right on the package. It's like our mantra: collect them all. And I can remember Aaron Archer at a BotCon saying, we don't really expect everyone to buy every transform. And I was like, whoa, you don't? You know? And since then it's Transformers especially. Like the thought
There's
of
no
trying to buy
way.
every single one of those, no.
There's no
Just
way to
can't,
get every transformer.
no way.
That would
Yeah.
have to be the only thing you collect, and even then, you would have an extremely difficult time.
Yeah. And even doing like not international packages or anything like that on Transformers, because I see some of these vintage collections and I saw somebody has a collection of just Inferno, Generation One, just Generation One Inferno, and it's insanely huge. It's a huge collection, and it's just Generation One Inferno. Um,
That makes it
but
difficult for guys that need Inferno for their Generation 1 collection.
but it's not every figure that he has is unique.
Oh,
Like it's a different package, it's a different country, it's a different something. He's not
wow.
like just army building Inferno. He's
Oh,
collecting different ones, and
oh,
there's a lot there. There's a
oh,
lot out there, and a lot. How time consuming that would be to do something like that.
yeah.
But even if you were to just buy one of every Transformer, look at how many of them were done now for like
You can't.
kids lines,
You
and
can't.
It's
I see it on a daily basis. You can't do it. It's impossible. I'm trying to just get 86 animated feature film ones right now because I love
yeah,
that movie and it's my favorite, one of my all-time top 3 favorite movies, and I love those. That's difficult to find because there's only one of certain ones per case, and you have to get them before other people that are getting them and stuff like that. And I can't buy everything online. I'd be going broke, and I'm already going broke as it is.
yeah, yeah. No, me too. Me too. Yeah, it's a problem these days. Hopefully, things will.
Plastic crack is a true statement.
Oh, I know. I know. I just love toys. I love my problem too is I love old toys and I love them for a different reason than I love the new toys. And it's not all nostalgia. That's a whole other topic I could get going on. It's not all nostalgia for the reason why I collect toys. I think that just my love of toys has remained the same over the years. You know, I don't watch TV today because I'm nostalgic about watching TV from in the 80s. I watch TV because I love watching TV today, just the same as I have my whole life. And I still love toys, you know, so it's not all nostalgia.
Yeah.
But it's difficult because there's so much of it and so much to buy.
It is. It's very difficult. I was a huge toy collector when I was a child. If I don't know how much of my past you know, of my tragic story, but I lost my whole toy collection when I was
Oh,
about 16. I had all the Masters of the Universe, all the Transformers, all the G.I. Joes, Thundercats, Silverhawks, Cops, Mask, you name it, I had everything, except for odd stuff like that I wasn't aware of because it was too early for my age. Like I didn't
yeah.
have ROM, I didn't have Micronauts, I didn't have some of that stuff in the 70s. You know, I wasn't aware of
I
Action
must be
Man.
a little older than you then. I didn't get it
Yeah.
wrong, but I had Micronauts.
Uh, I knew about the comic, obviously, because I was a huge comic guy, but I didn't
Yeah,
know about the toy until I got into the comic book. And I said, oh, there was a toy line back in the 70s or the late 70s, early 80s. I didn't know about that. You know,
yeah,
I think I really got focused on toys in 81 and 82 and 83. That's when the three or four major brands, other than Star Wars. I knew about Star Wars. Of course, everybody knew about Star Wars.
yeah.
But then 82, 83, 84 is where all the major brands started to maybe coalesce. With the exception of like vintage G.I. Joe, Barbie, Hot Wheels, and Star Wars, that those four I knew were already there. But the new stuff, He-Man, G.I. Joe, Transformers, that was where it began for me. And I had all that stuff. But we had to make a decision when I moved to Florida, and I've lived in Florida ever since when I was 16. What will I take? Most people that know me know this tragic story. Do I take my comic collection or do I take my toy collection? My parents gave me that ultimatum, and I picked my comic collection. Had I known that it would have been much easier to replace my comic collection than it would to replace my toy collection, I would have made a completely different decision. And where would I be today if I had kept all my original toys from the 80s?
Yeah, that's tough. I always feel bad whenever I hear various stories. I mean, that's what a lot of people did. A lot of parents eventually told the kids to let the stuff go. I was really fortunate though that you know, my mother was always very encouraging of me to take care of my toys, to not lose the pieces, and she never told me to get rid of anything. So I was very lucky in that regard.
Right
But like
on.
I started collecting GI Joe on November 14th, 1982, and have collected it pretty much ever since then.
Wow.
With a break there between late 85 to mid 89. So yeah, I've I still have my original figure, which was a Cobra Soldier.
I wish I had my original uh, two figures and vehicle when I was that age. I got them for my
Did you write
birthday.
your
It
name
was
on anything, like your initials on anything that you had? Because
not
I have
back then.
seen
No.
some people have, I've seen once or twice that people think that they found, uh, you know, the collection of somebody. Because It seems like Battle Beasts always have initials on the bottom of them, but some toys, Star Wars, I see that. So it's always a thought in my head that it'd be neat if somebody was able to find, toys that they sold off that were actually there from their childhood collection. So I think that does happen sometimes.
Well, I knew we had to get rid of it, but there's a mystery right now as to how I got rid of it and where it went, because we moved and I thought we had put it at my aunt's house, who lived in Nashua, the other town over from us.
It wasn't like
till
you
we
just
could,
you
huh?
put it somewhere. So you put it somewhere. It wasn't like you just sold it
Well,
off.
no. Well, that's the mystery though, because I'm not entirely sure, because the facts don't back that up. Because I asked my mom, well, I thought we put all our toys in Auntie Linda's house, and then we were supposed to go back a couple months later because we had other stuff we had to go back to New Hampshire to get when we moved, and we were going to get them then. She says, no, she doesn't remember you bringing your toys over there, because I had conversation with her on the phone many years later. Hey, do you still have my toys? And she said, no, I don't remember you bringing your toys over here. So she doesn't have them. My mother doesn't remember what we did with them. I have a feeling I may have sold them all to a guy at a flea market, maybe, or my aunt sold them to somebody at a flea market.
It's one of those
so there's a
traumatic
mystery as to where they
blocked from your mind.
Yeah,
probably.
because it was tragic, I guess.
Yeah.
So you said you're going to be at AR. Are you going to be at Joe Fest next year? Is there any other appearances between those two?
That's still a ways off. Yeah, but that's the plan.
That's all you usually do, is 2 shows a year?
Well, as far as GI Joe ones where I'm showing up and participating in the Declassified booth at a panel, yeah. Not that I would not do another one, but work keeps me pretty busy, and I do some local shows where I just show up to buy some toys. I really would like to go to a few more of those than I did this year. That's true every year. I have a tendency to forget that a show is coming, and then I miss it.
Well, the Hershey, Pennsylvania one was just last week, and then there's another one coming up next week in Pennsylvania. That's where you live, right?
There's a lot of ones in Pennsylvania, so I haven't ever actually made it out to the Hershey one. But I'm told that it's a really good show and that I should go. I don't know why I didn't. Need to get a better vehicle, honestly, for getting around to some of those shows. I've flown to several things over the past several years, and I hate to be in a car hours by myself. It kind of stinks. Podcasts will get me through that a little bit, but it still just stinks. I get tired. I'm old and cranky.
Are you going to the new BotCon?
I don't think I'll probably go to that. I love
guests.
Do they have some guests going?
Last year, remember I talked to you about this. They had an incredible lineup of, I guess they had Flint Dilley. They had a lot of people at last year's BotCon. I don't know what they're going to do this year, but last year's was really good.
There's some people I would really like to meet. I'd like to get to a show where Gary Chalk is. I would like to meet all of the Optimus Primes, was one of my goals at one point. I met Peter Cullen and I met David Kay. Those are like the 2 big ones for me. Gary Chalk is also like really, really big Optimus Prime from Primal and the Unicron trilogy.
I met him. Yeah, I met him. He's a very nice guy. The guy that did Optimus Primal. Yeah. I met Peter Cullen. I'd like to meet the Optimus Prime of the Transformers. It was like the early 2000s, like 2000, 2001.
Guys.
Robots in Disguise, I think it was called.
Escaping me at the moment, but yeah, I would really like to. It was called Robots in Disguise.
I like that show. It's a very weird show, but I like it.
And apparently, that's going to include Alan Tudyk as Optimus Prime soon. And I would love to meet Alan Tudyk anyway. He's awesome. So, yeah.
So, can you let the folks know where's the best place they can talk to you and reach out to you on the forums and different places?
Facebook. I'm not Picard on Facebook. I think Facebook/Not Picard might be me. I think. I can't say that for sure, but I think that's me. I'm Patrick Stewart though.
You come up with Patrick
Stewart, you may find a different guy. So you need to look for this face, not the Star Trek one. So yeah, on YouTube, Articulated Points and the Full Force podcast. I also am just around at Joe Declassified. If you contact Joe Declassified, that's probably not going to be me. There's, that it's a big organization with a lot of guys focusing on things. But if you go to a convention where Joe Declassified is, you probably will find me there. But as far as online, it's easy to contact me through Facebook or to find Articulated Points or the Full Force I'm on weekly. So that's where I am.
Good. Is there anything else you would like to say to the fans out there before
No, I
we?
appreciate you having me on. This has been a lot of fun.
Great. Well,
It's a
thank
long
you.
one. I hope that I didn't drone on for too long. Like I said earlier, if you stuck
No.
around for me saying it. I sometimes talk too long, so I apologize if I went on too long.
Trust me, I can do this all day long for my entire life. If I could just talk to people about toys and GI Joe for the rest of my life and not do anything else, I could do it. So it doesn't bother me in the least. Whether the fans out there that are watching say something, that's up to them. But I enjoyed having you. I enjoyed talking to you each time that we've talked, and I thank you very much for you taking the time out to speak with us today.
Well, thank you. Just thanks for having me on. I always enjoy, even at shows too. If you see me, I try to. I like meeting new people. Everyone I meet has some unique aspect of things that I've not heard of before. So I definitely want to talk to people. So if they see me, definitely say something if you feel like chatting it up. I love GI Joe and talking about all this stuff. It's been fun to be on.
Thank you very much.